Lesson 36 addresses the question, how have American political ideas and the American constitutional system influenced other nations? Now, people who have studied the history of our country are aware of the great influence of Western civilization, as way back as ancient Greece and Rome, on the thinking of our founders. People are often less familiar with how, in turn, American ideas about government and human rights have influenced other parts of the world. So, let me ask, how have American ideas about government and human rights influenced other people, other countries, other than our own?
We can break that question down into ideas and then specific constitutional structures. On the idea front, there is no doubt that the Declaration of Independence is the most influential part of American document impact. On the structural front, it's a little bit more complicated because we do have a unique constitutional system. And even though the ideas from the Declaration of Independence and even certain constitutional ideas and including the Bill of Rights that might influence other people, on the structural side, it is very difficult to mimic and sustain an American-style system in any other culture.
Is there evidence, or what evidence is there, of the impact of American political ideas on other nations?
The variety of bills of rights, for example, that proliferated through the developed and the developing world after World War II is one very important example. So in the post-colonial era in Latin America, Africa, and Asia, when we see in the mid-20th century that people are grasping for new ideas of protection, they would borrow heavily from the Bill of Rights. When it comes to separation of powers and checks and balances, the totalitarian regimes that caused World War II gave even formerly Western countries pause about how to control authority and power.
Can you identify the impact of the Declaration of Independence?
Sure. The idea, again, of post-colonial societies, the idea of breaking away from a territory that is distant but also very powerful over your people and your nation. That would be true in the post-colonial breakaways in Latin America, in Africa, and in Asia.
What elements of American constitutionalism, in your opinion, have been most influential in other countries?
I think the most influential part of our Constitution is the Bill of Rights. And many countries, both developed and developing, have looked to the Bill of Rights for their own list of obligations as well as entitlements.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of presidential systems in comparison with parliamentary systems? And which are most prevalent today in advanced and emerging democracies?
Parliamentary systems are by far much more common than presidential systems. In a parliamentary system, the executive comes from the legislative body. So you have a majority party or a coalition government in the parliament, and then that body would choose the executive who's the head of government. Those systems might have a separate president, but that person might be a ceremonial head of state like the Queen of England, or can be independently elected and in a more powerful position like the President of France. A truly presidential system, however, which is one in which the head of state and the head of government are only one person, one office, independently elected, is actually pretty rare. Brazil and Argentina are two countries that tried to model on the presidential system by having constitutions, at least on paper, that resembled the United States. In reality, however, they have gone through several iterations of constitutional crisis and political change. Both countries have gone through periods of autocracy and totalitarian flirtations, as well as revolutions and takeovers. So the truth is, looking like the United States on paper is much harder to bring to reality.
What do you think has been the impact of federalism on other advanced and emerging democracies?
This is an interesting question because federalism probably predates the United States by many centuries. Federalism is an interesting question about the organic nature of a country's borders. So if you think about a federal nation like Germany, the states of Germany predate Germany itself. The unification of Germany had to take place around the existing borders and cultural differences that were within the same people. The same would be true for other federal countries such as Canada, India, Australia, and Brazil. So there is a more ancient tradition. I would say that they may have some constitutional connection to the United States, but the actual roots of those countries' federalist systems are much older.
Has there been an impact of the American system of judicial review on other advanced and emerging democracies?
Yes, and I think that this connects to the Bill of Rights question. The reason why we would need advanced systems of judicial review in other countries is because they have a more robust adaptation or a more real inspiration from the Bill of Rights. So, for example, the Bill of Rights looks at whether the government is going to take over some part of a person's individual rights. How would we adjudicate that? If the government is doing something, it's probably due to a majority background for that idea. Even in a democracy, however, we have to have checks that the majority will not always rule. So with individual rights and group protections, you need some kind of an institutional structure to protect those ideas. That would come from independent judicial review. Now, we can look in different types of judicial review, though. So in some countries, like France, you can actually bring a judicial question before the actual issue has been implemented. In the United States, you cannot have a live judicial debate in the abstract. It has to be a controversy that is based on the implementation of a law that was passed by Congress. So every country will do it a little bit differently. For example, some countries do not have a constitutional court at every level, like the United States. An act of Congress can be declared unconstitutional at a district court level as well as at the Supreme Court level. So some countries in Europe have specific courts for constitutional questions, and those are separate from administrative questions.
Though you've already addressed this, let me just ask, and if there's no new answer to give, we'll just move on. But what has been the impact of the Bill of Rights on other nations? Is there anything you want to add to what you've said?
Sure. The Bill of Rights has been very influential, but it's been expanded as well. So, for example, Canada has a Bill of Rights that's about 33 years old, and it has much more specific type of economic rights than we spell out. So there are really three types of rights that are in other countries' Bills of Rights. We have two of the three, so let me now name them. One is criminal defendant protection. So our amendments, for example, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and the Sixth Amendment, protect criminal defendants on trial regarding confrontation of witnesses and search and seizure even before they are defendants. A second category of rights is about freedom of expression, organization, and the ability to petition the government. We have that, and so do other Bills of Rights. The Canadian Bill of Rights has a third category, and that is economic protection as well. That you have the right to seek employment, and you have the right to have certain social goods and entitlements. So that's something that is really out of sync with the American philosophy of limited government.